do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in. Whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching the show on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And, of course, 14:30 a.m. if you're driving around the Indianapolis area. Big show today. We got Zach Pereles of CBS Sports. He's going to join me coming up here in an hour. He'll be on at 11 o'clock. And it's a lot of Colts. We'll start looking ahead to the weekend a little bit. IU going on the road to take on Oregon. Like I said, big show today, but it is Wednesday, which means that we are going to once again be doing Over the Hump Day.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's Hump Day.
Woo-hoo! Hump Day!
No, as a coach, I gotta get us over that hump. I gotta get them comfortable, knowing that you're gonna be in close games and you gotta make plays coming down the home stretch. I mean, in the tournament, we were right there. I just didn't get them over the hump, man. And that's something that I live with every day of my life. Because I truly believe that was the team to really make some noise and get to the finals, and I just couldn't get them over the hump.
Mike Woodson. Big shout out to Mike Woodson for being the inspiration for Over the Hump Day. We did it a lot during basketball season when he was the head coach. We're doing it this NFL season to talk about Daniel Jones and his trajectory of going from a quarterback that no one had any faith in, a quarterback that was a part of, quote, the worst quarterback competition in the history of the NFL. That is what the competition between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson was deemed before the year started. Now, where is Daniel Jones at on this trust scale? I would argue that based on Daniel Jones's play through these first 5 weeks in which the Colts are 4-1, Daniel Jones has firmly moved into the Jalen Hurts level of quarterback play. You can also find quarterbacks like Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, and Jared Goff in this tier of quarterbacks. When things are going well, you're very happy with this quarterback. Like when you're up by 7 and you can run the football, you're going to feel great. Because these quarterbacks are going to make the right decision. They're not going to turn the football over. When they're properly supported, you're going to score a ton of points. Life's pretty good for Jared Goff, getting to throw the football to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams and Isaac Tesla, and he can turn around and he can hand it off to Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery, and they can run it behind that great offensive line. Same goes for Sam Darnold in Seattle. He can throw it to Jackson Smith and Jigba. They've got 2 good running backs. They got a good offensive line. Brock Purdy in San Francisco, he can hand it off or throw it to Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle's still one of the best tight ends in football, and eventually Brandon Ayuk's going to come back, and he'll be really impactful, and Juwan Jennings is as reliable as a wide receiver as you're going to find, and Ricky Pearsall, a guy that they took in the first round 2 years ago, he's been really good, and then you've got Daniel Jones here in Indy with a great support system, just like all these other guys, a really good offensive line, a really good group of wide receivers, the best running back in football right now in Jonathan Taylor, a good play caller as a head coach, and so on. when they're all properly supported, then you're going to score points. It's going to happen. And you're probably going to have a lead a lot of the time, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch them, as it has been a lot of fun to watch Daniel Jones and the Indianapolis Colts to start this season. Second best offense in the NFL behind the Detroit Lions in terms of points scored through these 5 games. All of those quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts, Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones. When things are going well, things are going well. But do not ask them to carry you across the finish line. If you have to ask them to do that, then you're probably not going to win. That's why the Rams moved Jared Goff from Los Angeles to Detroit. Now, to defend Jared Goff a little bit there, he's obviously improved since those days. Sam Darnold got to the playoffs last year in Minnesota. Good offensive line, great weapons, good running game, good defense. Couldn't get it done. Despite going 14-3, he couldn't get it done in that spot. The Eagles dominated like every playoff game that they played last year, except for one, and they won the game because the defense just utterly dominated on that final Rams drive. Jalen Carter was just like, no big deal. I got this. And so on. And that is the one thing with Daniel Jones that we are still kind of waiting to see. Can he win games late when the opposing team knows that the Colts are going to throw the football? Because we've seen him this year when he's gotten to rely on play action and, they've had a lead and you can turn around and hand the ball off. We've seen him in those spots, and he's been great in those spots. One of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year because of that. But twice this year, we've seen him play with the Colts down. The first time against the Broncos. Colts ran 8 plays. They're down by 2. They ran it on 7 of the 8 plays to set up a 61-yard field goal. They thought that was a better idea than throwing the football. Then against the Rams, 90 yards or however far they had to go, a long way, a minute, all 3 timeouts. You should feel pretty good about that. And then, 3 plays in, he throws a pick. Now look, it's only 2 games. He will have more opportunities as the year goes on to prove that he can, win a game late and be that guy. That is the last hurdle for him. He's never going to be in the tier of like Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. It's just not going to happen for him. And that's not a knock, because we're probably not going to see that from any other quarterback right now. With that being said, he could move into like this Baker Mayfield area, where when I watch Baker Mayfield on Sundays and the Buccaneers are down late and they need one drive from Baker, I feel pretty great about Baker Mayfield going out there and getting it done. That is, I think, the last kind of hurdle for Daniel Jones. Just prove that one last thing, check that last box, and then I'll feel really good about the idea of the Colts contending in the AFC, because that idea has been floated, and I just don't think that that's feasible. I don't think that, as fun as this Colts team has been, even though they're 4-1, I'm not convinced that this is a Colts team that could compete amongst the best teams in the AFC. And part of that is I want to see that final thing from Daniel Jones. I also don't think that this defense is good enough. That's really the biggest thing. And I don't think Daniel Jones is good enough to overcome a bad defense like Josh Allen is in Buffalo, like Justin Herbert could be, we'll see, in Los Angeles. Okay, the Broncos defense is outstanding. Okay, Patrick Mahomes can overcome a bad defense and so on. So I've got to see just a little bit more from Daniel Jones before I sit here and I'm like, yes, this Colts team can contend with anyone in the AFC, because I just don't think that they're at that point quite yet. Now, they did take a bit of a blow against the Raiders, losing Spencer Schrader for the rest of the year. They've gone out. They have signed Michael Badgley. I guess that's how you say it. He is the Colts' new kicker, and I don't think this is a big deal. I don't think it really matters that much. This guy, he hadn't kicked in the NFL since 2023, but he's kicked he's got 6 years worth of experience kicking in the NFL. And it's pretty I don't know what the term is. It's okay. It's kind of what you'd expect from a guy that's a kicker and not on a team right now. He's not great. He's not terrible. He's just, he's just a kicker, Badgley has struggled from beyond 50 yards. I think that's really the only noteworthy thing about him. 5 of 13 isn't great, but from every other distance, though, he's been really good. Like from 20 to 29 yards out, he's 27 to 28 in his career. From 30 to 39 yards out, he's 29 to 30 in his career. From 40 to 49 yards out, he's 37 of 48 in his career. And so from inside of 50, he's going to be very reliable. And that's really what Spencer Schrader was this year. Okay, he attempted 14 kicks all year. He was 13 of 14. He was 12 of 12 from inside of 50 yards. That is all that the Colts need. They need a guy that they can run out there to kick a 41-yarder and be like, all right, this is probably going to be 3 points. And I do think that Michael Badgley checks that spot. And there's a part of me that kind of likes that he's not very good from over 50 yards. Because I want the Colts to go for it in those spots. So a 50-yard field goal would be from the 33. Right? When you're at the opposing team's 33-yard line, that is a 50-yard field goal. So from the 33 to the opposing team's 42, right? That is your 50 to 59-yard field goal range. I don't want the Colts to kick field goals in that spot. I want them to go for it. The best word to describe Daniel Jones and this Colts offense this year is efficient. They are very good at staying on schedule. If it's 4th and 2, less than 4th and 5. So 4th and 5 or less. And you're in that range, and it's obviously a normal part of the game. Like obviously, like if you're down one late, obviously like you're going to kick that. But it's like the first quarter, it's your first possession. And you have the option between running any kicker out there to kick a 50-yard field goal. Don't do that when it's 4th and 5 or less. This offense has been so good all year that they should go for it on 4th down consistently. If their option is go for it on 4th and 5 or less or kick a 56-yard field goal, go for it. This offense is good enough that they should go for it on 4th down in these questionable spots. Plus, the other part of this Colts offense that is obvious, once they get a first down, they just kind of start rolling. I feel like they either go 3 and out or they wind up in the red zone. They very rarely stall out around midfield. And because of that, because this Colts team seems to get into the red zone so often, like your longest field goal attempt there is going to be 42 yards from the 25. This guy is going to be fine kicking those, field goals from within 50 yards. So I think he's going to be fine one way or the other. And look, if he's not fine, then you can go find somebody else. Okay, there are plenty of kickers out there. They checked like they tried out like 9 different kickers yesterday. Okay, they have plenty of options. So if Michael Badgley struggles, you can just go and find somebody else. Okay, so we'll see, how it works out. Like I said, I think that he's going to be just fine. Just fine. And that's really all that you need from your kicker, right? When he walks out there, I don't want to be worried or concerned, and I don't think that we're going to be when Michael Badgley walks out to kick the football for the Indianapolis Colts. I was thinking about this last night. I was thinking about, the NFL and the best division in the NFL. Where does the AFC South stack up? Before the year, you would have said this is the worst division in football, but now the Colts are 4-1 and the Jags are 4-1 and the Texans are 3-2 and some people still like them. I am not all the way there yet, but could you make an argument for the AFC South to be the best division in football? I think you can. I don't know if I'd agree with the argument. We'll get into that in 4 minutes.
Dan Dockage at noon. The real Jonathan Smith Show. Now, this is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Zach Pereles is joining the show at 11 today. Going to talk a lot of NFL stuff, may dabble in a little bit of the college football stuff as well. Timothy Bowman with an interesting question over on X. If you want to send me questions and things, you can either hop in the YouTube chat. Once again, that's Indy Sports Ticket, and you can throw them in the chat there, or you can tweet at me at __Jonathan Smith. Timothy Bowman asking, if the Jags win the division, will Chris and Shane be able to keep their jobs? I think so. It just kind of depends on the record. Like if the Colts go 10-7 and, or like the 7 seed in the playoffs, then probably not. But if they go 12-5 and the Jags also go 12-5 and the Colts lose off the tiebreaker, but they're the 5th seed, then I think that they could keep their jobs. So it just kind of depends on the record and how they lose this division. So speaking of divisions, I was thinking about the best division in the NFL last night. Who would it be? So we're just going to work through all of them. I'll start in the AFC North. Before the year, you would have said that this could be the best division in the NFL. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, Joe Burrow and the Bengals. The Steelers are always feisty, and, they're bringing in Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's 3 potential playoff teams right there. And then, you got the Browns who just suck. No other way to put it. Sorry. And so we're now 5 weeks into the season. Lamar Jackson's hurt with a hamstring. They're missing like half of their defense. That's problematic. The Bengals, Joe Burrow's out he's out for 3 months with turf toe. And then you throw in the fact that defense is horrendous. That is one of the worst defenses in the NFL from a personnel standpoint and from a production standpoint. And then, the Browns are still terrible. Congratulations, though. Shedeur Sanders is your backup quarterback. I'm sure that just makes everything so much easier for them. So it's definitely not the AFC North. Then you've got the AFC East. It's the Bills, a very scrappy and tough New England Patriots team that is somehow, some way, 3-2. And then it's just a ton of crap. The Jets are terrible and the Dolphins are terrible. So it's definitely not the AFC East. And then you have the AFC West. The Chargers are banged up, but when they're healthy, they're really, really good. Like, they started 3-0 for a reason. Like that's a good football team. And then you got the Raiders, who are much worse than expected, or at least much worse than I expected. And then you have the Chiefs, who are struggling, but it's the Chiefs, so we should all give them the benefit of the doubt. And then you've got the Broncos, who are really good. I really like that Broncos team going on the road and beating the Eagles. That is the best win of the NFL season so far. Down by 14 in the fourth quarter, and they find a way to come back and win the game. Really impressive stuff from them. So the AFC West, you could definitely make a case for. And then you have the AFC South. It's the only division with 2 teams that have 4 wins at this point in the year. The Jaguars are legitimately good, especially if Trevor Lawrence plays how he did on Monday night. Just efficient. Before that game, he'd only been completing 58% of his passes. He finally played well. All right, the Jags had been winning, despite him. Now they won Monday night because of him. And if that becomes the trend, then the Jaguars are going to be really good. Obviously, the Colts are good. 4-1. Dominant wins against bad teams. They're 1-1 against the 2 good teams that they've played. So the Colts obviously are very good. If the playoffs started today, they would be the 1 seed. Will that hold? Probably not, but hey, I hope it does. And then you have the Texans, who are 2-3, but people still like them despite their many, many issues on offense. But they have one of the best defenses in football. Like, that defense is going to keep them in games. Playmakers at every level, to arguably the best edge rushing duo in the sport between Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. Good linebackers. Derek Stingley Jr. is one of the best corners in the NFL. So the Texans are an interesting bunch. You can't make a case for the AFC North or East. So in terms of the best division within the AFC conference, I would argue it's the AFC West. I like the quarterbacks in that division more than I like the quarterbacks in the AFC South. I like the coaches in the AFC West more than I like the coaches in the AFC South. They're just a little more well-established. I also think that the teams are just better. Chargers are banged up, but they're still a good team, right? The Broncos have the best win of the season so far, going to Philly and completing that 14-point fourth-quarter comeback. The Chiefs are currently have the worst record of, the Chiefs, Broncos, and Chargers. But once again, it's the Chiefs. It's Patrick Mahomes. They're going to make the playoffs. If they won that division, I wouldn't be surprised. It's the reality of it. And then when I look at the AFC South, like obviously the Colts and Jags are good, but the separator for me and why I'd go with the West over the South is if the Texans made the playoffs, I would be very surprised. Just because of how horrendous that offensive line is and that offense in general. So I just like the ceiling of the Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs more than I like the ceilings of the Colts, Jaguars, and Texans. Like if the Broncos or Chargers and the Chiefs, of course, if any one of those three teams ended up in the AFC championship game, I wouldn't be surprised. As of right now, if the Colts, Jags, or Texans ended up that deep in the playoffs, I would be very surprised. Then again, long season. We're not even, a third of the way through it. We will be at the conclusion of Sunday. But as of right now, that's kind of how I feel about it. So I would say that the AFC West is the best division in the AFC. And then we move to the NFC. The NFC North, Vikings are underachieving a little because J.J. McCarthy just hasn't been healthy, and when he has played, it hasn't been great from him. The Bears are a work in progress with a new head coach. I do think that they're going to get better as the year progresses, but right now, they don't really look like a playoff team. And then you have the Packers and Lions, who are both awesome. No way around it. Like, if you wanted to tell me right now that the Lions were the best team in the NFL, I wouldn't agree with you, but I would listen to you. Okay, and then the Packers, they're going to be fine. I know they tied the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, and everyone got off the bandwagon, but I'm telling you, if there's any time to buy Packers stock, it's right now, because it's not going to get any lower than it is right now, barring any injuries to like Micah Parsons or Jordan Love or anybody like that. The NFC East. No, it's not the NFC East. The Cowboys can't play defense. If you were a Colts fan when Coach Eberflus was here, then you already knew that. The Commanders, surprisingly, even with Jaden Daniels as their starting quarterback, they're the oldest team in the NFL. But when you have Jaden Daniels, you can beat anybody. The Giants are bad, and the Eagles are the defending champs, and they're 4-1, but they feel weird because they can't seem to play a complete 4 quarters. Saquon Barkley apparently had to sit down with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and figure out what's going on there. So there's issues there. So I don't think it's the NFC East. The NFC West, if the Seahawks, 49ers, or Rams made the NFC Championship game, I would not be surprised. And I love the Cardinals roster. Kyler Murray just can't stay healthy for some reason. He seems to get hurt every year. He got a little banged up against the Titans on a play where the ball just hit him in the helmet. Weird. Very weird. So I really like that division. And then you have the NFC South, which is unquestionably the worst division in the NFL. If you want to tell me it's any other division, I'm just going to ignore you because the Falcons aren't very good. The Buccaneers are obviously awesome, but the Panthers aren't very good either. And then you've got who's the last team in that? And then you have the Saints, who are bad. Right? Like they've got 2 teams in that division that, if they ended up with the number 1 overall pick, I don't think that you would be very surprised. It's kind of how I feel about it. Where are we at here? There we go. Colts, by the way, are 6.5-point favorites over the Cardinals on Sunday. I was thinking about the Cardinals, and I wanted to get that out there. So In the NFC, I think it's pretty clearly the NFC West, and I would also argue that that is the best division in the NFL as well. Just like the AFC West, there's a lot of good coaches in that division. I think Mike McDonald, not Mike McDaniel, Mike McDonald, head coach in Seattle. I think if he was an offensive-minded head coach, we would talk about that guy so much more than we already do. Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay need no introduction, and I like what Jonathan Gannon has done in Arizona. By the way, the Arizona Cardinals fining him $100,000 for chewing his player out on the sideline is absurd to me. I get that, like, he put hands on him, slapped his pad or whatever. I do not care. How dare a head coach hold his player accountable for making a mistake that easily could have been avoided? I get it. Like, you shouldn't touch your player or hit your player on the pad or whatever. But still, 100. That's insane to me. Insane. Anyway, it's the NFC West. That's the best division in the NFL. A lot of good coaches. The quarterback plays good. Like, Sam Darnold's having a really nice year. If you watch them play, if you watch the Seahawks play the Buccaneers on Sunday, best game on Sunday, by the way, probably the best game of the week in general. If you watch that game, then you know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to the Seahawks and the Buccaneers. And then, of course, you got Matthew Stafford, one of the 7 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Brock Purdy's like a fringe top 10 guy surrounded by all the right things. And then Kyler Murray's probably a slightly above average quarterback in the NFL. So quarterbacks are good. I like the head coaches. I like a lot of the rosters as well. Like, the Cardinals just have a lot of really good players. Seattle, same thing. Jackson Smith and Jigba. I know everyone's, infatuated with Puka Nacua and how he's on pace to break Calvin Johnson's receiving yards in a season record. But Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle's having an amazing year. They have two good running backs. The 49ers roster needs no introduction. If that roster can just stay healthy, then everyone's going to fall in love with the 49ers all over again. So it's good rosters, good head coaches, really, really good quarterbacks. Again, if the Seahawks, Rams, or 49ers wound up in the AFC title game, I wouldn't be surprised. So I would rank the AFC South the 3rd best division in the NFL. I just don't think it has quite the ceiling as the other ones do. So that is my one holdup with the AFC South. Now, that could change. Like, the Colts could blow out the Cardinals this week, and I'd be like, that's a pretty impressive win. And then they could go to the Chargers and beat them in 2 weeks, or I guess in a week and a half. If they did that, my opinion on the Colts would probably shift quite a bit, because like I said, as of right now, I do think they're the best team in the AFC South. But the idea of them competing for like an AFC championship, or like competing for an opportunity to get to the Super Bowl, that feels like a step too far for me as of right now. Like I said, if they beat the Cardinals this week and then they go on the road to the Chargers, I will reevaluate that statement, because they're coming up on the end of what I thought was going to be probably their toughest 4-game stretch in the NFL season. That might be shifting a little bit. But this Rams, Raiders, Cardinals, Chargers stretch, I thought was going to be their most important stretch. They're 1-1 in it right now. If you beat the Cardinals, you're 2-1. Winning at the Chargers, we'll see how banged up they are that week. That's a real possibility as well, depending on how banged up the Chargers are. And then there's some easy games in there. And then they've got, 3 relatively easy games. They got the Titans at home. They're at the Steelers, and then they play the Falcons in Germany. And then they have their bye week. And coming out of the bye, it's 4 tough games. At the Chiefs, the Texans at home, at the Jaguars, the dreaded game that they can never seem to win, and then they're at the Seahawks to kind of close that 4-game stretch. So that stretch may wind up being a little bit tougher than this one. But if the Colts can come out of this 4-game stretch sitting at, like 5-2, I think we're going to feel really good about the Colts. Or I think we're going to feel better about the Colts going forward. If they come out of it at 6-1, and maybe willing to budge on the idea that they could compete to be in the AFC Championship game. Right now, this feels like a team that's going to win a playoff game and then lose in the second round. But hey, we'll see. This is why we play the games. The Colts have to stay healthy. We're going to get our first peek at their injury report this week, and very excited about that. I'm also very excited about Saturday. Indiana going on the road to play Oregon. They're currently 8.5-point underdogs. I'm just excited for college football in general, and I feel like we're finally at a point where we have enough data on all these teams to start putting together a top 12 in terms of teams that are going to make the playoff. I'm going to give you my current top 12 in 4 minutes.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X __ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM if you're driving around the Indianapolis area. Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, he's going to join me here in about 20 minutes. We'll talk a lot of NFL. Going to be a blast. Where do the Colts stand amongst everybody else? Where does Indiana stand amongst the rest of college football? It is that time of the year again where I make people upset when I give out my college football playoff top 12 teams. So for the Colts or for Indiana this year, what is that? Oh, it's for Dan. Why don't people ever want to leave me things, Noah? I don't get it, man. All right. Anyway, as I was saying, for Indiana, where do they stack up against the rest of the country? They have a real opportunity coming up on Saturday to kind of prove that they're not in that second tier of teams, which is kind of where I have them right now. I think there's 3 definite best teams in the country, and then there's everybody else. So if I was submitting a ballot, and I had to be like, all right, these are the 12 best teams. Here's how I would do it. Number 1, I would have Oregon. Oregon going on the road to Penn State and winning. To me, I think that's the best win in the country. Oh, but Jonathan, Penn State lost to UCLA. How can you say that? Let me just ask you a question. Did you watch that game? If you did, then you know exactly why I said that. And then secondly, Penn State will be ranked again. I don't know who they play this week. They're probably going to win. And guess what? When they win, they'll probably be ranked like 20th in the country, maybe higher. If Penn State winds up as like a top 15 ranked team in the country at some point in this season again, then guess what? That will not be surprising at all. It won't be. Okay, they play Northwestern this week. They're going to win that game. And then they're going to go to Iowa. And they're probably going to win that game. And then everyone's going to be like, oh, all right, Penn State, let's rank them like 16th. And then they go play at Iowa at Ohio State. And then they get Indiana at home. All right, like that. Penn State, even though they're not ranked, like they're still one of the 25 best teams in college football. It's just the reality of it. So Oregon at number 1 because they have that win. They also have the best quarterback in the country. I love the defense and Dan Lanning as well. I rank Miami second. They've got 2 impressive wins, beating Notre Dame and Florida State on the road. Notre Dame at home, Florida State on the road. They fixed that defense in the portal. Carson Beck's playing at an extremely high level. The offensive line has been really, really good for them this year, which is not a surprise when you have Mario Cristobal as your head coach. Like, you should expect to always have a very good offensive line, and Miami absolutely has that. As I said, the defense from last year significantly improved from last year to this season. So I've got Miami at number 2. And then for at number 3, I have Ohio State. And you could tell me that Ohio State's the best team in the country, and I don't think I'd really argue with you all that much. With that being said, though, resume does have to matter at some point. And when I look at Ohio State's resume, like, it's not great, especially compared to the 2 teams that I have in front of them. Like, that Texas win was supposed to be awesome, but I'm not going to give them as much credit for that for 2 reasons. One, that game was at home, which is different than Oregon going on the road to beat Penn State. Also, I think everyone agrees that the Penn State loss to UCLA was weird and that Penn State will be ranked again. If Texas wasn't ranked for the rest of the year, I don't think that would be very surprising, just because Texas is clearly not as good as Penn State. So I've got Ohio State at 3. I think that is the top of college football right now. If I had to bet, one of those three teams or the field to win the national title, I would bet one of those three teams. I would. Number 4, I have Ole Miss. I feel like I kind of have to put them here, even though I don't really want to. I haven't been overly impressed with them. With that being said, I do like Trinidad Chambliss. They beat LSU, but, Nussmeier was hurt in that game. The offense, though, is still very explosive. The defense isn't good, right? But it doesn't have to be with that offense scoring as many points as they do. So I got Ole Miss at 4. I got Oklahoma at 5. They beat Michigan handily at home earlier in the year. John Mateer is almost back. There's a chance, I guess, he plays this week against Texas. But Brent Venables made it sound like he may not. I don't know. There's a chance he plays. We'll see if he does or not, though. I don't think that they need him to beat Texas. I think Arch Manning is going to struggle mightily against that Oklahoma defense because that Brent Venables defense is nasty. It is amongst the best in the country. They have really good weapons on offense, and I like how good they are in the trenches on both sides of the football. So I got Oklahoma sitting at 5. Number 6, Texas A&M. Texas A&M has a really good win on the road at Notre Dame. I had them below Oklahoma and Ole Miss because I like Mateer and Chambliss, the starting quarterbacks at Oklahoma and Ole Miss, more than I like Marcel Reed, the starting quarterback at Texas A&M. He's had one game all year where he's completed 20 passes or more. That was against UTSA in the first game of the year. So that's kind of my holdup with A&M. I know a lot of people love A&M. I get it. Mike Elko, good coach. The defense is good. They have a ton of talent. The difference for me, though, between them, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss is the quarterback position. Here's where I make everybody mad. Indiana ranks 7th in the AP poll, 7th in the Colts poll. Jonathan, you must have them 7th. I don't. I have Alabama 7th. And, Indiana fans, go ahead and point to the record. We're 5-0. They're 4-1. How can you have them ranked in front when their record isn't as good? They have more good wins. That's part of it, and I get it. Indiana crushed Illinois at home. They did. That is a great win. But that win is not as good as beating Georgia on the road and beating Vanderbilt at home. I get it. They're 5-0, and Alabama's 4-1. But let me ask you a question. If Alabama had opened their season playing Kennesaw State and Old Dominion and Indiana State, Alabama would be 5-0 as well. And I'm not going to sit here and punish Alabama, who has 2 better wins than Indiana does, for actually playing a tough non-conference game. We complain about the non-conference schedules of teams all the time. And the reason why they don't play tough non-conference games is because they get punished for it in the ranking. And I'm not going to do that to Alabama. Also, I think if Alabama played Indiana, I would take Alabama to win. That being said, Alabama, not a perfect team by any stretch of the imagination. The offense has gotten better. I really like Ty Simpson the last 2 weeks. He's been awesome against both Georgia and Vanderbilt. The defense has some holes, but the offense for Alabama is rolling. If they can figure out the defensive side of the football, then they'll be playing in Atlanta for the SEC title game. Number 8 is where I have Indiana. Okay, I already said it. I have them below Alabama because they just don't have as many good wins. Right? They crushed Illinois at home. That's a great win. Right? They went on the road and beat Iowa. That's like those wins just aren't as good as beating Georgia on the road and Vanderbilt at home. I think you and I can agree on that. Okay, records aren't everything in college football. Part of it is who you play, and Alabama's played a significantly tougher schedule than Indiana has. So I gave them the nod. If Indiana goes on the road to Oregon this Saturday, though, and they just make it a game, like they don't even have to win. Obviously, if they win, we're going to leapfrog them way up in these rankings. But as of right now, if they can just go up there and just play a tough game, just have it not look like going on the road to Ohio State last year where that game wasn't really close. Indiana's first drive was great. After that, all Ohio State. Have it not look like when you went up to Notre Dame last year. I was like, oh, they only lost by 10. Yeah, you scored your 2 touchdowns in the final 100 seconds of the game because you recovered an onside kick, right? That game was over by the start of the fourth quarter. Have it not look like that. Just be competitive. And if you are, like, I will probably move you up on the list. We'll have to see what everybody else does. 9th, I have Texas Tech, the first. This is the first non-SEC. Actually, no, it's not true. We have an ACC team ranked number 2. Never mind. This is the first Big 12 team I have ranked. Their roster's excellent. They're the best team in the Big 12. All the money that they spent in the offseason is paying off. Beren Morton is a good, experienced college quarterback. I think they're good in the trenches. Okay, their defense, what's the best defense I've seen Texas Tech have in my lifetime. Okay, I might have them ranked too low. They've got one really nice win over Utah on the road. So Texas Tech, I think that's a really good team. I think they're the best team in the Big 12. I predicted them to win the Big 12 before the year started. And sometimes this happens. Like, you have these teams that spend a whole bunch of money in the portal, like Texas Tech did, and then it pays off. And that is what's happening for them right now. They're going to play Kansas at home this week, and then next week they're going to go on the road to Arizona State, and we'll get a little bit of a better idea of how good Texas Tech is. Number 10 is where I've got Georgia. They're just a lesser version of all of the teams that competed for national titles. They're not as dominant in the trenches as they used to be. They're not as good at linebacker as they used to be. Secondary's not as good as it used to be. Gunnar Stockton's a gamer, but I don't think he's as good as Stetson Bennett or Carson Beck. Their defense just isn't what it used to be able to make up for that either. They can still run the ball decently well, but it's about it. Number 11, I have Tennessee. High-powered offense. Don't love the defense, but they can score on just about anyone in college football. Like I said, the defense is the issue. Okay, with that being said, though, they could very easily be 5-0 with the win over Georgia if their kicker can just make a kick at home. But he missed. I'll be there on Saturday. Very excited to go and experience Neyland Stadium for the first time. So 12th, the one non-Power 4 team I have, because obviously the highest ranked Group of 5 team makes the playoff. I have South Florida. I understand that Memphis is ranked in front of them, but I'm not going to punish a Group of 5 team for going on the road and playing Miami and losing. Memphis' best wins Arkansas, who's not very good. It's just reality. I hate saying it, but that's the truth. South Florida's beaten Boise State, and they beat Florida in the Swamp. Those are 2 impressive wins, and that's enough to be my Group of 5 bid in this era of the college football playoff. I just want, for whoever the Group of 5 team is, whenever they walk in to play, the 5th seeded team, I just want to feel like they have a chance. And with Memphis, I don't feel that way. With UNLV, I don't really feel that way. But with South Florida, with what they did against Boise State and Florida, I do have that feeling about them. So I'm going to give them the nod as my Group of 5 team. Fun fact for you, stat of the day. Stat of the day here. First time since 1986 that in college football, 2 teams ranked in the top 10 went from ranked in the top 10 to unranked, Texas and Penn State being those 2 teams this year. Very, very crazy. Zach Pereles of CBS Sports is going to join the show when we come back here at 11. We're going to talk a ton of NFL. The Colts, how do they kind of measure up against the rest of the NFL? Joe Flacco to Cincinnati, how interesting is that? Is it interesting? We're going to get into all of it. We may touch on a little bit of college football as well. It's going to be great. Zach Pereles of CBS Sports in 5 minutes.
Let's do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show, hour number 2, getting underway. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. Hour number 2, getting it underway in the best way possible. We got Zach Pereles from CBSSports.com joining the show, where he does a great job writing about and covering the NFL. You can read all the stuff over at CBSSports.com. What's going on, Zach? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Colts are 4-1, so I'm great. This is so much better than talking about Anthony Richardson last year. It's just, it's so much better, man. How good are the Colts? Because people here, I think, are getting a little out of hand with how good they are.
Yeah, they're really good. I can imagine that people are getting out of hand. I 100% believe you there, but I think this team is legitimately really good. Are they the best team in the league? I don't know if I'd go that far, but they are really, really solid. Like, you just see a roster that is well built, a coach that is fully in control of his offense. And I think that you learn a lot about teams when they play other good teams, obviously, but the ability to just take care of business against bad teams is also really impressive, because all of these guys are getting paid. They're all professionals. So for them to be able to just take care of business in games that they should take care of business in, that can't be overlooked.
I completely agree. Like, the Panthers are bad. I not only know that because I've watched the Panthers play, but I also know that because they beat the Dolphins by 3. And like, I know you're a college basketball fan, and we're getting ready for that here in Indiana. Like, if Indiana opened with like Indiana State, who I know is like a better mid-major, but if they beat Indiana State by like 5, I'd be like, I don't think Indiana is going to be very good this year. So, like, even though they're playing some lesser teams, like, you can still learn quite a bit about them. I will ask, though, because I do think this is concerning, I guess. The 2 games that the Colts have played against good quarterbacks, Bo Nix and Matthew Stafford, they've given up 27 and 28 points. And then against the 3 lesser quarterbacks, the defense has been much better. What are kind of your thoughts on the Colts defense through these first 5 games?
Yeah, I think that it's okay. I think that it's workable. I think it's probably even better than okay. They've been pretty good. Just solid really in all aspects. You're still looking to see them, I think, make maybe a little bit of a step forward on that back end. Like you mentioned, a couple of good quarterbacks have had some big throws, big moments against them. But in general, like, the defense is good enough to hang in there. And against a lot of teams, that's good enough to not only hang in there, but win. So I really do think that they've been really solid. They seem to have everything patched up, except for, obviously, we talked about the one game that they lost. They had 10 guys on the field, and they gave up a huge play against the Rams. So I think that I've been impressed by their young guys. Are they going to be a dominant down-to-down defense against the better teams? Probably not. But if they can stiffen up in red zones, if they can continue to do a good job not allowing big plays, those will be the things that you really want to keep your eye on.
That's how I feel about it. Like, just be stingy. Once again, joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, who does a great job covering the NFL over at CBSSports.com. Just be stingy. Just make things tough. I think it's a very opportunistic defense. Like, they beat the Broncos because the one bad throw that Bo Nix made, Cam Bynum picked off. I know everyone here is mad at A.D. Mitchell for obvious reasons, dropping the football and then the hold. My thing is, like, Zaire Franklin dropped a pick, and so did Charvarius Ward in that game against the Rams. And so I think in order for them to beat these better teams, it's just going to be a very turnover-dependent defense. Because like you said, like, they just aren't talented enough to down be dominant. I will say the pass rush is lacking. That's kind of one of the things that's really jumped off the page. The trade deadline is less than a month away now. Do you think there are any edge rushers that could be on the move that would work well for the Colts?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see Odafe Owe move yesterday. That I think is kind of the tier that the Colts would be looking at. Maybe a guy who, obviously the Ravens have been a mess this year. And Odafe Owe, some of his numbers have been really good. He had a strong sack total last year. I think he reached double digits. His pressure numbers, though, have kind of been the thing that hasn't been as good. So this year, he's kind of fallen back to earth because he doesn't get as much pressure as really that sack number would lead you to. So I'd be looking at somewhere like that where maybe there's a team that wants to get its younger guys a few more opportunities. It looked like Odafe Owe is a former first-round pick. He was kind of starting to cede time to a guy like Mike Green in Baltimore. So I do think there are going to be opportunities for guys maybe in the last year of a contract, guys who have put up some solid numbers. I don't think that you're going to get an ace pass rusher or something like that, but that's kind of the player that I'm looking at to be moved. So somewhere in that range, I thought that he honestly would have been an interesting fit there in Indianapolis, really athletic guy. So that's probably what I'm looking at. Get someone, maybe a speed rusher, a designated pass rusher. I think that could be a strong addition.
I was thinking about a guy like Bradley Chubb from Miami. I feel like he would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, Miami is one that I've gone back and forth on in terms of I don't know what they are. I don't know what they'll do at the deadline. I would think that they would sell, but Stephen Ross doesn't seem like a guy who is always super patient, and you always wonder if a general manager and a head coach on a hot seat want to move on from their good players. So we'll certainly see. I think that he's going to be a name that pops up a lot, and that could certainly be one that would interest me if I'm the Colts as well.
That's a really good point. Two guys that are probably going to get fired at the end of the year because you said you don't know what they are. I know they are bad. I know that. And so we'll kind of see what they do. But edge rusher and corner, those kind of seem to be the things that the Colts are looking for. Corners are a little bit tougher to come by because there's not very many good corners in the NFL. When you have one, you definitely don't want to get rid of them. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about the Colts. So I think it's safe to say Daniel Jones is the surprise of the year so far in the NFL. I don't want to ask how sustainable this is because we've seen it now for 5 weeks. What is something, though, that you're still kind of curious about with the way that he's played?
That's a great question. I think that I'm curious to see if his really, really low sack rate can hold up. Right now, he has the lowest sack percentage in the NFL after being that, the thing that I came into the season, I was like, this guy still takes a ton of sacks and he still throws a lot of interceptions. Can both of those trends completely reverse? And they have so far. But when Daniel Jones does get pressure, he's been good passing the ball, but he doesn't avoid a ton of pressure when he gets it. The offensive line has kept him really clean. So his sack rate is really low, but his sack to pressure rate is not. So I'm really interested there. Does he continue to get the ball out? Does he continue to make good decisions? There are a lot of coaches that'll say a throwaway is a great play. And I think that Daniel Jones has done a really good job of not taking unnecessary risks and just not making negative plays. But I'm going to be interested to see when they play the Texans, who have two great edge rushers, and some of these other better teams down the stretch. I'm going to be interested there because I've been really impressed. People look at the highlights, but I think it's the lack of lowlights that has been really, really good for him.
That's been my biggest thing with him as well. I've just been really impressed by his decision making. He's thrown 2 picks through 5 games, which is surprising, just kind of given his time in New York. And I do think a lot of it is what you were saying. Like, the offensive line has remained very healthy. Like, Matt Gonsalves missed the game against the Rams, but aside from that, like, they've just they haven't missed games, and that's been a really large part of it. What do you think? Because I opened my show with this today. I want to see him again because we saw this in the Rams game. What does he look like when he's down by 7 and he's got 90 seconds to go, 75 yards to tie the game or win it? Because we haven't really seen him too much in that spot this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you're going to get some of those opportunities coming up. I don't know if it's going to happen with the Cardinals, who I think are that's a whole other bag to open there, but they'll get the Chargers here soon. The Chargers, they have a really tight defensive secondary, really sticky there. You'll get the Steelers. You'll get the Chiefs here in a month and a half. So, yeah, I'm interested in seeing what he can do when he is behind. I think what's been such a great formula for them is that they get to lead. They can lean so heavily on Jonathan Taylor, and then they can lean secondarily into that really good play action game where Daniel Jones, he looks like the athlete he was 3 or 4 years ago, and he is making these good reads on play action throws. And play action opens up a lot, but you're right. You're not running play action when you're down 7 with 90 seconds left, or if you get down a couple scores in the second half. How does he look in the straight drop back passing game? But again, like, you can only play who you play against so far, and they've taken care of business in 4 of the 5 opportunities they've had.
They have. Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports talking about the Colts. Are they better than the Jags?
Whew, that's a good one. Oh, man. Are they better than the Jaguars? I think right now I trust Indianapolis's offensive infrastructure a little bit more than Jacksonville's. Trevor Lawrence, obviously a really good game Monday night. I was actually chatting with another writer, and I was thinking back to Trevor Lawrence and that I think it was a 67-yard touchdown run against Ohio State. And I was like, where is that Trevor Lawrence? Like, obviously big, tall, strong, athletic, rocket arm. Like, those were the things that helped him get drafted number 1. But the athleticism and the running ability was a huge part of his game in college. And then we saw it again last night. But it's just a little bit too inconsistent for me still with him as a passer. And their running game it started out really well. It hasn't been quite as effective the past couple of weeks. So I think that I trust the infrastructure in Indianapolis a little bit more. I do think that in terms of that pass rush, I think when they get Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen going together, the defense probably has a little bit higher of a ceiling. So, boy, I'd love to see it. Can I give you that answer and worm my way out of it?
Yeah, that works. I mean, we're going to see it twice this year. First matchup is in December, so we got we have about 2 months until it happens. I think I'm with you because, like, they win. They start 3-1 despite Trevor Lawrence being just awful. Like, he was so bad in those first 4 weeks. And the one question I have about their defense, which I do like, because like you said, Trayvon Walker, he didn't play on Monday night against Kansas City, but when he and Josh Hines-Allen and Eric Armstead are all rushing the passer, like, you love that. Devin Lloyd's a beast. I like their corners, even the ones not named Travis Hunter. And so my question for them, though, they've forced like 14 turnovers in these first 5 games. They forced 9 all of last year. I don't know how sustainable that is. And And when those turnovers when those takeaways kind of die down, like Trevor Lawrence is going to have to not turn it over, which I'm pretty sure he's turned it over in every game that he's played in this year. And he's just got to be more consistent. With that being said, I thought he played his best game of the year on Monday. So the division, it's just weird, Zach. Like we came into the year, it's like, yeah, the NFC South and the AFC South are both going to be terrible. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what are you more surprised by 5 weeks into the year? The Chiefs and Ravens both being under 500, or the AFC South being the only division in football with two teams that have 4 wins or more?
I think while it's what the AFC South has done is really impressive, and I'm also still not out at all on the Texans, I think it's got to be the Ravens and the Chiefs both being under 500. I mean, the Ravens were the Super Bowl favorites, and it's not just that they're under 500. They just lost to the Texans 44-10. That's not that's a very un-Ravens-like score, and this is, to be honest, a very un-Ravens-like team. I think that they don't stop the run. They have major issues stopping the pass, and they had some of these issues kind of creeping, kind of bubbling under the surface before all of these injuries. They haven't been able to run the ball, even when Lamar Jackson was there. People really remember week 1 against the Bills, who they have always just destroyed in the run game because they are super big and super physical in the run game, and the Bills just haven't always been built to handle that. But they have problems at every single spot on the defense and kind of now on the offense too. Derrick Henry's fumbling. They really can't get anything going offensively. Lamar Jackson is hurt. And then they really don't have like a man-to-man beater in that wide receiver room. Zay Flowers does a lot of fun stuff after the catch. DeAndre Hopkins is a contested catch guy. Rashad Bateman's kind of your downfield guy, but they don't have a guy who consistently just wins one-on-ones. And the defense, man, like all 3 levels are destroyed by injury and completely overmatched. Like the Texans had not been able to do almost anything offensively throughout the first 3 weeks. Then obviously you give them the Titans and they kind of get some stuff going, but that game was even pretty ugly. And they looked like the Harlem Globetrotters against the Washington Generals. Like guys are wide open all day long. They're going up and down the field. It was like, I think I wrote, I do, a column about 5 things that we liked and didn't like in week 5. And I just said the Ravens, it looked like JV versus varsity. Like they're overmatched. They're playing undrafted rookies at several spots. They're playing guys that they just signed off the street. They're playing guys that they are overmatched. And I think that we just haven't seen this from the Ravens, and we assume it's going to get better because it's the Ravens and they've been so consistent, but they don't have the guys right now.
They don't. And a lot of that, I think, is the injuries. Once again, joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, who does a great job writing over at CBSSports.com. He's got an excellent newsletter as well. I think a lot of it's the injuries, like no Matabuke for the whole year is tough. Kyle Van Noy's missed time. Like, there's just a lot of injuries. But I'm like, even when they've been healthy, though, like you said, like it just hasn't been very good. Roquan Smith, I know he was first team All-Pro last year, but I think part of that is just because his name is Roquan Smith and he's the middle linebacker for the Ravens. And he was, I think, the 10th pick in the draft by the Bears. So I think part of it was just his reputation, but like he's 28 now. He's a little bit older. And so it's just, I'm with you. Like it's very surprising how bad they've been. Okay. I want to talk about Arizona because the Colts are going to play them on Sunday. I kind of like Arizona. I look at their roster, Zach, and I'm just like, they got a lot of really good players. I think the issue is just Kyler Murray's limited, can't really play from within the pocket. I feel like he wants to leave the pocket as soon as he has any sort of like excuse to. But that being said, like I like Jonathan Gannon. I know people are mad at him right now because he yelled at a player. How dare he do that? But I kind of like Arizona. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, Arizona is one of these teams that you look at their roster and you're like, you're right. There's a lot of solid pieces here. They have really, really fallen off a cliff in the run game, and that was even before they lost obviously James Conner and now Trey Benson. Their run game coordinator left last year or at the end of last year to become the Cowboys offensive coordinator. And Clayton Adams, that's his name. And he made that running game so good and so consistent. You think about James Conner for the past few years, just powerful, churning out, yards and being a big part of the pass game. Their running game is it's one of the league's worst now. And that is really tough. They spent all offseason building up the defense and doing pretty much nothing to the offense. And you're kind of seeing that in terms of like, there's nothing that's better than last year. And there's a lot of stuff that's significantly worse than last year. Maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. is better than he was last year. I think that he's had some nice moments after a pretty rough start, but there's nothing better than they were last year. And that's a pretty big issue if you're not improving year over year and also getting pretty significantly worse than, what your team identity was, which was this physical run game. So I've kind of fallen out on the Cardinals. Obviously people are going to talk about them blowing that game last week, but they've had trouble putting away a lot of teams. I think that they were up 20-something points on the Panthers, and that game ended up being a one-score game. I just don't trust them in winning moments to step up to the plate and make those winning plays. So I think I'll be pretty heavily on the Colts this weekend.
That's how I feel about it. They're only 6.5 point favorites. And I feel like it should be over a touchdown. I feel a little hypocritical saying I liked Arizona and then following it up with, I think the Colts should be favored by at least 7.5. But hey, what are you going to do? Once again, joined by Zach Pereles of CBSSports.com, where he does a great job writing about and covering the NFL. You can follow him on X at Zach_Pereles. I've got two takes that I'm like kind of working on that I'd like to run by you, and then I'll let you go. My first one is Deshaun Jackson's the most influential player in the history of the NFL, because he was the first guy to ever drop the football just short of the goal line. 2 weeks in a row, we're seeing it. Will this ever go away? And what should coaches do to make it go away?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is hilarious. I'm actually a big fan of that. Everybody wants to be like Deshaun Jackson.
That's right.
The problem is that when you're like Amari DeMercado, you're not Deshaun Jackson. So you can't even do, your margin for error is a lot smaller. I think that, oh man, it's interesting. Like, Shane Steichen had said that he had this logos and letters policy where once you run past the logos and letters of the end zone, then you can celebrate. And of course, AD Mitchell just doesn't do it. I don't think it'll end, to be honest. I think it's here to stay. But what can you do about it? I think that it's just I actually saw a pretty funny suggestion that they should make the NFL like rugby, and once you enter the end zone, you have to put the ball down with control of it and place it down in the end zone.
That'd be so funny. That'd be awesome. That'd be amazing. I love that idea. That's great. Once again, Zach Pereles at CBS Sports, joining the show to talk about the NFL. My second take that I'm working on, I got to workshop it a little bit more. At what point do NFL teams stop drafting quarterbacks in the first round and instead they just sign the backup quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings?
Man, it's going to be a tough one when Carson Wentz is just leading the NFL in passing yards next year. Yeah. I mean, I think that one thing, we actually did a buy or sell story today, and people, we kind of were buying or selling if the NFL has a quarterback depth problem. And the thing that you realize is the really well-coached teams don't have a quarterback depth problem. The Vikings are finding ways to win. We've obviously seen the 49ers find a way to win. We've seen teams like the Buccaneers, like they drafted Baker Mayfield as a bridge quarterback and turned him into a franchise quarterback who is in the MVP conversation this year. So I don't think that there's an NFL quarterback depth problem. I think that there's a problem with a lot of teams being able to adapt to their quarterbacks and develop them. So, yeah, I mean, the Vikings are one of those teams. They can just figure it out. And yeah, kudos to them.
Do you know? Yeah, I'm with you. And like, it's, Kevin O'Connell has become famous for saying that quarterbacks don't fail, organizations fail, quarterbacks. And then I think there's there's some truth to that. I don't know. I feel like when you have, this is going to sound mean, I think no matter where Anthony Richardson would have gone, he probably would have failed. Because like at some point, like it is on the player, but I do agree that I think it's an excellent point that you make that all of the well-coached teams don't seem to have an issue at backup quarterback. The year when Mahomes was hurt, and I think it was Chad Henne who had to play a playoff game for the Chiefs, or like a very important regular season game. Like the Chiefs won that game because it's Andy Reid. As you said, like Minnesota, all these backups are playing well. Kyle Shanahan won games with Nick Mullins, winning games with Mac Jones now as well. So I think that's an excellent point. Where can people find that article at?
Sure. That's on CBSSports.com. I think it's NFL Week 6, buy or sell. That's myself and Doug Clausen, one of our really good researchers at CBS Sports, talking a whole lot of stuff, some of the most pressing issues. We even talked a little bit of, is Jonathan Taylor the best running back in the NFL? So Colts fans, you might not like my answer, but when you're a top 3 running back in the NFL, I think that you can be pretty happy with that.
Okay. I won't spoil it. I won't let the people know who you voted. I disagree. I think Jonathan Taylor's been awesome, but I am a little biased. Last thing for real here. What are your thoughts on the Bengals going with Joe Flacco over guys like Jameis Winston and Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, I think the Bengals, at some point, I think the optics have to play a huge role. And could the Bengals have done better? Probably. Could they have made a bigger swing? Sure. But should they have? I don't really think so. I think that this team is in huge trouble unless they're playing like they didn't even make the playoffs last year with Joe Burrow playing quarterback because the defense is so bad. But like when you're down 28-3 and your quarterback has thrown 3 interceptions and you're getting booed off your own home field, you have to do something. And the price was pretty low. And again, like if Joe Flacco has another 2023 run in him, then great. But if he doesn't, at least it's not a 3 interception day where you just look completely hopeless offensively with Jake Browning. So sometimes you just kind of have to save face. And I think that this is an example of that. I think they could have done better, sure. But should they have done better? I'm okay with what they did.
Yeah, I don't mind it. And I will say, I think Joe Flacco is very capable of throwing three interceptions in a day. I mean, 5
right.
a couple of years ago in the first round of the playoffs. But no, I'm with you. It'll look better than what it did with Jake Browning. But it'll be interesting to see the 40-year-old try to move behind that offensive line because that offensive line's it's a little rough. Zach, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Zach Pereles, you can check him out on X at Zach_Pereles. Go over to CBSSports.com. You can read all of his stuff. He does an excellent job covering the NFL. It is Wednesday. I've got Over the Hump Day coming your way in 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching the show on X, __ Jonathan Smith, follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. It is a beautiful Wednesday. A little chilly today, high of like 68. Don't love that. I kind of like it when the high is like 80, personally. Maybe that's just me, though, which means fall is almost here. Lucky us. Anyway, it is October, so, it had to come at some point. But it's also a Wednesday, which means it's time for Over the Hump Day.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on. I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Listen, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-woo! Hump day!
No, as a coach, I gotta get us over that hump. I gotta get them comfortable, knowing that you're gonna be in close games and you gotta make plays coming down the home stretch. I mean, in the tournament, we were right there. I just didn't get them over the hump, man. And that's something that I live with every day of my life. Because I truly believe that was the team to really make some noise and get to the finals, and I just couldn't get them over the hump.
We love Mike Woodson. Thank you for all of those sound bites. Mike Woodson, man. So it's Wednesday. We do Over the Hump Day every Wednesday. We did it during the Indiana basketball season to talk about whether or not Mike Woodson was able to get his teams over the hump. Right now, though, we're talking about Daniel Jones and if he's gotten over the hump of a quarterback that you trust. And I would say yes in every department except for one. When he's got a lead, very easy to trust because he's just doing a good job of making the right decision with the football on a consistent basis. Only 2 turnovers through the first 5 games for Daniel Jones. Okay, he's doing a really good job off of play action and just knowing where the football is supposed to go. When the Colts have a lead or even if they're down early, like you trust Daniel Jones to make the right decisions and to not push the Colts out of the game. The one thing he hasn't checked is down late. We have 1 minute and 45 seconds, two timeouts. We're on our own 25. We need you to go 75 yards and put us in the end zone so we can win or tie. And it would be unfair of me to say that he can't do that because we've only seen him in that situation once, technically twice if you count that game against the Broncos where the Colts ran the football on 7 of 8 plays to set up a 61-yard field goal that they missed. Shout out to the Broncos, though, for the leveraging penalty that allowed Spencer Schrader to hit a 46-yard game winner. So the other one was on the road against the Rams. I think the Colts got the ball with about 1.5 minutes to go, all 3 timeouts, and he threw a pick on like his third pass attempt of that drive. And I'm a big, we need more data guy. I say it a lot. I need to see more. One game doesn't define somebody. One play doesn't define all that kind of stuff. And so I'm not going to sit here and definitively say that Daniel Jones can't do those things, but I am going to sit here and say that we haven't seen him do it yet. And maybe we'll see it here soon. I doubt that we see it on Sunday against the Cardinals. With that being said, those guys are getting paid too. When they go on the road to the Chargers here in 2 weeks, we could see it in that game. When they go on the road to play Pittsburgh here in about a month, we could see it in that game. So he's going to have an opportunity to kind of prove that he can do that at some point during the season, and hopefully he can. Actually, hopefully he can, but hopefully we never have to see him do that. Hopefully the Colts just beat everybody 40-6. If they could do that, then that would be amazing. That would be such a fun year of watching football. So the Colts made an important transaction yesterday. They went out and they signed Michael Badgley to be their new kicker. My thoughts on that in 4 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X _ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. The Colts have made 2 signings in the last 2 days. Start with the bigger one here. Michael Badgley coming back to Indianapolis to kick the football around for the Indianapolis Colts. So I don't think the signing is a big deal. I don't. It obviously sucks that Spencer Schrader's hurt. He had been very reliable to start the season. with that being said, Michael Badgley is fine. All right, like there's a reason why he wasn't on anyone's roster. It's just the very simple reality of it. Now, with that being said about Badgley, like I think he's going to be reliable. He struggled from beyond 50 yards. He's 5 of 13 on kicks, 50 yards or further for his career. I don't think that's going to matter though. The Colts have only attempted 2 field goals over 50 yards all year. The offense is so good that they should be going for it on 4th down in those spots anyway. So for you to attempt a field goal from 50 yards, you have to be on the 33. So between the 33-yard line and the 42-yard line, that is a 50 to 59-yard field goal. If it's 4th and 5 or less between the Colts in their opponent's territory, between the 33 and the 42, they should just go for it. This has been this has been arguably the most efficient offense in football this year. They have just been so reliable that even if Spencer Schrader was their kicker, they should be going for it in those spots because 7 is worth, twice as much as 3, a little more than twice as much. So I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing that this guy has struggled from beyond 50 yards because it should hopefully incentivize the Colts to go for it in those like 4th and 5 on their opponent's 34-yard line spots. All right. Like I want this Colts offense to be as aggressive as they can be just simply because of how efficient they've been. And I think having a slightly lesser kicker will hopefully result in them being a little more aggressive. The other part of this is Colts have only attempted 2 field goals over 50 yards all year. This is an offense that either goes 3 and out or they wind up in the red zone. That's kind of what it feels like. This team doesn't stall around the 45-yard line very often. And when we've seen it this year, they've gone for it on 4th down, right? We saw it twice in that game against the Broncos. So hopefully Michael Badgley is reliable. I think that the Colts are going to put him in a spot to be reliable, right? Like his success rate from inside of 50 yards is good, right? Like it's good enough to, to not have to worry about it. So from 20 to 29 yards in his career, he's 27 to 28. From 30 to 39 yards in his career, he's 29 to 30. And then from 40 to 49 yards out, he's 37 of 48. So he's reliable, and I think he's going to do just fine as the Colts kicker. They also just went out and signed Jermaine Pratt. Jermaine Pratt was previously a linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals with the great Lou Anarumo. And he was also playing for the Raiders. And then the Raiders gave up 40 to the Colts. And Jermaine Pratt wasn't very happy about that. And, I can understand that. And from there, he apparently got a little mouthy with the coaches, and the coaches cut him loose. Now he's back playing for Sweet Lou, this time here in Indianapolis. So I think this might be the guy that sticks. This might be the linebacker that is consistently lining up alongside Zaire Franklin for the rest of the year. Last year, he had an incredible year in Cincinnati, 143 tackles. That's pretty impressive. Also, a pretty good defender in pass coverage as well. That is the nicest thing about him, and I think that's why he's going to stick as the guy playing linebacker alongside Zaire Franklin. Like in 2022, he had 10 passes defended. Last year, he had 6. He's already got 2 this year. Like he's a guy who can really cover it at that linebacker spot, which is really important for the Colts because they just don't really have that. Like Joe Bacci, not really, great in pass protection and so on. So we'll see if Jermaine Pratt works out here or not. The biggest thing with him is how's he going to fit in that locker room? Because he was apparently a bit of an issue in Las Vegas per reports. So Michael Badgley and Jermaine Pratt, those are your two new guys playing football here in Indianapolis. Indiana goes on the road to play Oregon on Saturday. And I've got, what's his name? Dusty. It's not Dusty Hannes. I always want to say Dusty Hannes, but that's not his name. That's a former shooting guard for the Arkansas Razorbacks from when I was a child. Dusty Hara. There we go. He is the sideline reporter for Oregon. He's actually going to join the show tomorrow at 11:20, and we're going to talk a lot about Indiana and Oregon and start to get you ready for that. I'm going to reach out to Shehan Jayaraja as well, see if we can get him on Friday to just kind of talk about the upcoming weekend. I haven't checked the full slate of the college football weekend, but obviously the headliner, 3:30. I can't believe it's the freaking CBS game, and this game isn't at night. 3:30, Oregon, Indiana. There's some other interesting games going on there. Alabama's going to play at Missouri. Ohio State's going to play at Illinois. Obviously, Indiana and Oregon. We have the Red River rivalry. Oklahoma at Texas. Let's see. What else is going on here? I think that's really kind of it. Georgia's going to play Auburn. Michigan's going to play USC. South Carolina's going to play at LSU. What is the line in that one, actually? LSU's favored by 9.5. Jeez Louise. So there's some interesting games coming up this Saturday. So hopefully we can get Shehan Jayaraja on for that. But Indiana, Oregon. Indiana is an 8.5-point underdog. Last time I checked over on FanDuel, you can get it at 7.5 other places. I don't think they're going to cover that. I'll just be honest. I don't think that they cover the 8.5 or the 7.5 or whatever it winds up being. Oregon, I think they're the best team in the country right now. That's what I think. And I've talked about this before. I think it's just a theme in college football. There is a gap between the three best teams in the country and everybody else. Oregon, Miami, and Ohio State, I think, are hands down the three best teams in college football. And then there's a Grand Canyon-sized gap between those three teams and Ole Miss, who's currently ranked 4th. It's the reality of it. I think Oregon is as complete a team as we're going to see this year in college football. Dante Moore, best quarterback in the country so far. The defense is nasty. You got Dan Lanning, just the ultimate motivator, right? Everything he does just kind of seems to work there in Oregon. So, like, they're just really, really good. And I think Indiana is outside of that tier of the best teams in college football. They are outside of that tier of we can win a national title. Can Indiana make the playoff this year? Absolutely. I think they will. I think they lose this game, and then they're going to go on the road to Penn State. We'll see if they can win that one or not. I know everyone's down on Penn State right now, but winning at Penn State is never easy. So they're going to go play at Penn State. Let's say even if they lose that one and they're 10-2, like they should still get in, right? Like they should still get in with that win over Illinois at home, right? Beating them by 53. Jeez Louise. But that being said, well, I do think Indiana is better this year than they were last year. Well, this year, if they won a playoff game, that wouldn't surprise me because Fernando Mendoza is a really good quarterback. And I think they're better in the trenches this year than they were last year. They're still really good on the perimeter. D'Angelo Pons didn't play against Iowa. He should be back this week, though. And, like, he's a really good corner that's reliable and all those things. They are better, but they are not at a point where they're competing for a national title. They are not at that level. Oregon absolutely is. And as I said, there's just a gap between the three best teams in college football and everybody else. I think we see the gap on Saturday, and Oregon covers the 8.5 points. Maybe it's late. Maybe they kick a field goal late. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't think that it's going to be, Oregon going up 35-7 and they have to call off the dogs. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it'll be a respectable performance from Indiana, but they ultimately wind up losing by double digits because Oregon's arguably the best team in the country, and Indiana isn't. And it's on the road. Very tough to win on the road in the world of college football, right? Most of the upsets that you see happen when the higher ranked team go on the road to play against another team. So that's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen, no matter how you listen, whether that was YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, X__Jonathan Smith, the Indy Sports Ticket app, or 1430 AM. Thank you for listening, no matter how you did. I know there's many places to get your sports talk, so thank you for coming to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. If you want more from me, you can go check out My Take Is over on YouTube, where I post a ton of just different stuff from what I do here on the show. So feel free to go over there and check that out. Thank you again for listening. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way next. We got the Bear at 1:30, who's going to talk a little college football and a little bit more. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way in 5 minutes.